Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the world of recommendation rules.
Oh, cool.
So basically, how software can be designed to give users a little bit of a nudge
Yep.
in the right direction when they're configuring a complex product.
Interesting.
Whether you work with software, or you're fascinated by user experience, or you just love seeing clever solutions to tricky problems.
Yeah.
This one's for you.
I like those.
You sent over a document called recommendationrules.pdacf. So let's just jump right into the good stuff.
Let's jump in.
Okay, so first things first. What exactly are these rules?
Yeah.
Imagine you're building a custom computer online.
Right?
There are tons of choices for processors, RAM storage, and more.
It's a lot.
It can be very overwhelming.
It can.
Recommendation rules step in as a sort of intelligent assistant,
Okay.
suggesting specific values for those attributes
Wow.
based on what you're trying to achieve.
So it's like having an expert whispering in your ear, hey, for the kind of gaming rig you want, you'll need at least this much RAM.
Exactly. And the document gives a fun example with pizza.
Pizza.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a recommendation rule could pre-configure a meat lover's pizza with only pepperoni and sausage.
Interesting.
You wouldn't be able to change those toppings,
Right.
ensuring a true meat feast.
I like it.
Huh.
But it's not always about like locking users into specific choices.
Right.
Sometimes it's just about subtly steering them towards a good starting point.
Right, like a gentle nudge
Yeah.
instead of a hard push.
Exactly.
And speaking of nudges, how do these recommendations actually appear to the user?
They're usually pretty subtle,
Okay.
often appearing as text suggestions
Mhm.
right next to the configurable options. None is the most hands-off approach. It's
Okay.
just a suggestion that the user can easily ignore.
Gotcha.
Set means the software might pre-fill the recommended value,
Okay.
but the user can change it if they want.
Got it. So none is like a whisper. Set is a little more assertive.
Yeah.
And then there's forced set, which...
Which is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
It basically locks the user into a specific choice.
No wiggle room.
No wiggle room.
For instance, the document mentions an example where the service type and server options
Right.
are completely locked due to a forced set rule.
Yep.
Interesting. It sounds like there's a lot of potential for these set types to either guide users or restrict them, depending on how they're implemented.
Absolutely. It all comes down to how the system is designed
Right.
and the goals of the developer.
The goal is okay.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that this set type can be defined in several places.
Yeah.
That seems like it could get confusing fast.
You're right. It can be defined within the attribute itself, in the recommendation rule, or even in the configuration flow.
Whoa.
But don't worry, there's a clear hierarchy in place
Okay.
to prevent conflicts.
That makes sense.
Forced set always overrides set,
Oh, so this is a pecking order.
which overrides none, regardless of where it's defined.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But here's something that really caught my eye in the document, this auto lock feature.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like the software is learning from the user's behavior.
It kind of is. Let's say a rule initially recommends value A
Okay.
for attribute X,
Mm-hmm.
but the user decides they want B instead.
Okay.
With auto lock turned on, the software will remember that choice.
Oh.
Even if the rule runs again,
Okay.
it will keep attribute X at B.
So it's adapting to the user's preferences.
Yeah.
What happens if you turn auto lock off?
Then things revert back to the default.
Okay.
The rule would once again set attribute X to A.
Oh.
It gives users control over how much influence these rules have.
I see. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like a balance between automation and user freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens if multiple rules apply to the same choice?
Oh, good question.
Do they duke it out in a digital showdown?
Not quite, haha.
Okay.
The document lays out a clear order of precedence.
Okay.
It takes into account where the rule is defined,
Okay.
its complexity,
Mm-hmm.
and even its position in the list.
So it's all very logical
Yeah.
and organized then.
No need for digital fisticuffs.
Uh-huh. Okay, but can we get a real-world example of multiple rules at play?
Yeah, think about a pizza again.
Pizza. Okay.
But this time, with a multi-select menu for toppings,
All right.
you could have one rule that forced sets pepperoni,
Okay.
another that sets mushrooms as a suggestion,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a third that offers a choice between onions and green peppers.
Okay, so you'd end up with pepperoni for sure, because that's forced set.
Yes.
But you still have some say in the other toppings.
Exactly. And the rules can be designed to ensure that certain combinations never happen.
Like pineapple and anchovies together.
Like pineapple and anchovies.
Yeah. Some culinary boundaries are sacred.
Haha.
Exactly.
But are these recommendation rules limited to just configuration flows?
That's a good question.
Or can they be used in other areas of software?
The document also mentions that they can be applied to search results.
Oh.
Imagine searching for a product,
Okay.
and the software gently nudges you toward the options that best match your needs and preferences
Okay.
based on past behavior or other factors.
That's really neat. It's like the software is becoming more intuitive and helpful over time,
Yeah.
but managing all these rules sounds like it could get complicated.
It can.
What does the document say about that?
It dedicates a whole section to administration,
Okay.
explaining how to create, manage, and even test these rules.
Okay.
It talks about different condition types, like always true, simple, and advanced, as well as various action types like standard table lookup and something called bulk table lookup.
Bulk table lookup. That sounds interesting.
Which sounds particularly interesting.
Ooh, bulk table lookup. I'm sensing this is where things get really powerful.
You're right, but let's save that juicy tidbit for part 2 of our deep dive.
All right, listeners, you heard it here. We're just getting started. Make sure you come back for part 2, where we'll uncover even more about these recommendation rules and how they can shape the future of user experience.
It's going to be good.
Welcome back. I'm excited to jump right back into recommendation rules and explore that bulk table lookup feature you mentioned.
Yeah.
It sounded pretty powerful.
It is.
Yep.
Imagine you're working with a product
Okay.
with a ton of configurable attributes, and you want to recommend settings for several of them
Okay.
based on just a few user choices.
Right.
Bulk table lookup lets you handle all of that with one rule,
Oh, wow.
instead of creating separate rules for each attribute.
So it's all about efficiency,
Exactly.
streamlining the process.
The document explains how bulk table lookup pulls information from a data table.
What's a data table?
Basically a spreadsheet
Oh.
where you map out all the conditions and their corresponding recommended values.
Okay, so I'm picturing like a giant spreadsheet with all sorts of scenarios laid out.
Yeah.
Sounds like a super organized way to manage these recommendations.
It is.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Go.
It's not limited to just one-to-one mappings.
Okay.
You can set up complex filters and conditions
Oh.
to determine exactly which row from the data table should be used to recommend attribute values.
So, like, give me an example of this bulk table lookup in action with one of those complex filters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's say you're selling servers online.
Okay.
Your data table lists various processors, RAM configurations, storage options, and more. You could create a rule that says if the user selects a processor with a certain speed and they choose a specific operating system, then set the RAM to at least 32 gigabytes and the storage to at least 1 terabyte.
Wow. So it's like the software saying, okay, based on those choices, here's the minimum you'll need to ensure a smooth running server.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It ensures the user ends up with a system that's well-balanced and meets their needs,
Yeah.
even if they're not a server expert themselves.
That's incredibly helpful, especially for users who might feel overwhelmed by all the technical specifications.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, but I'm curious, what happens if there are multiple rows in the data table that could potentially match the user's choices?
Oh, good question. The document addresses that.
Okay, good.
It explains that if multiple rows match,
Okay.
the system combines the unique messages from those rows into one comprehensive message for the user.
Okay, so no information overload.
Right.
For the user, they get a clear, consolidated set of recommendations.
Yeah.
That's great. Are there any other important points about bulk table lookup that we should be aware of?
A few things stand out.
Oh.
First, it can even handle situations where some references in the data table are missing from the product hierarchy.
No.
For example, if a specific server model is discontinued,
Okay.
the rule will still work,
Okay.
but it will generate a warning in the logs just in case.
So it's robust enough to handle real-world scenarios where things might change unexpectedly.
Exactly. And the second point is about consistency.
Okay.
When setting numeric attributes using bulk table lookup, the decimal delimiter in the data table has to be a period.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, the value won't be converted correctly.
So attention to detail is important when setting up these rules.
Yes.
A misplaced comma could throw things off.
You got it. And there's one more interesting tidbit.
Okay.
The numeric values in the data table rows need to be formatted correctly for the system to understand them.
So again, it's all about making sure the data is clean and consistent so that bulk table lookup can do its magic.
Absolutely. It emphasizes the importance of thoroughly testing these rules before unleashing them on unsuspecting users.
Yeah.
Even small errors in the data table can have a ripple effect on the recommendations being made.
That's a good reminder. It's easy to get carried away with the power of these features,
It is.
but forgetting the basics can lead to trouble.
You said it. And speaking of powerful features, let's move on to another interesting aspect the document covers.
Okay.
The ability to add configuration actions as conditions for recommendation rules.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really advanced way to fine-tune those recommendations.
It is. It basically lets you trigger recommendations
Okay.
based on actions the user has already taken within the configuration flow.
I need a real-world example to visualize this. Hit me with it.
Okay. Imagine configuring a car online.
I am there.
There's a configuration action that lets you add a sunroof.
Okay.
You could set up a recommendation rule that says, if the add sunroof action has been executed, then recommend tinted windows.
Ah, that makes perfect sense. It's like the software's anticipating your needs and offering helpful suggestions based on your previous choices.
Precisely.
It creates a more personalized and intelligent configuration experience, guiding the user toward options that make sense based on what they've already selected.
I love how seamless and intuitive that feels for the user.
Yeah.
It's like having a virtual assistant who knows exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Are there any other details about using configuration actions as conditions that we should know?
The document keeps it pretty high level,
Okay.
but it does mention that you can use different operators and value types
Oh, okay.
when setting up the conditions.
Okay, walk me through what that means practically.
It means you can create very specific conditions based on the outcome of a configuration action.
Okay.
For example, you could trigger a recommendation only if a specific action was completed successfully,
Wow.
or you could trigger a different recommendation if it failed for some reason.
So it adds another layer of control.
Yes.
And allows for even more tailored recommendations based on how the user is interacting with the system.
Exactly. And now let's move on to those little details you like.
Oh,
The quirks and limitations mentioned in the document.
yeah.
Remember that decimal point issue?
Oh, yes.
You mentioned that you shouldn't use more than 6 decimal places
Right.
when recommending a number.
It sounded like a strange limitation.
It is a bit quirky.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. While the functionality still works,
Yep.
even with more decimal places,
Okay.
it generates an error in the admin log.
Oh.
Not ideal if you want to keep things running smoothly behind the scenes.
So more of a best practice than a hard limit then.
Exactly. And the document also mentions that there's a very specific date format required when setting date attributes.
Oh.
Just another little detail to keep in mind for those who like to be precise.
Details matter.
It is.
It's clear that a lot of thought has gone into designing this system to be both powerful and user-friendly.
Yeah.
But, you know, this deep dive has raised a question for me.
Okay.
While these recommendation rules are great for guiding users, where do we draw the line between helpful suggestions and manipulation?
That's a fantastic question and a perfect segue into the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of the technical ground,
We have.
but there's a whole other layer to consider.
Okay.
The psychology behind these nudges.
Yes, how these recommendations might be impacting user behavior,
Exactly.
even when they're not overtly forceful.
Join us for part 3, where we'll explore that fascinating aspect and wrap up our deep dive into the world of recommendation rules.
Welcome back, everyone. In the last 2 parts of our deep dive, we've been exploring the ins and outs of recommendation rules.
Right?
Those clever bits of software designed to guide users through complex choices. We've talked about set types,
Yep.
bulk table lookups,
Mm-hmm.
configuration actions, the whole technical shebang.
We did.
But now it's time to shift gears
Okay.
and explore a question that popped up earlier.
Right.
The psychological impact of these subtle nudges.
It's an aspect that often gets overlooked. I think we can get so caught up in the mechanics of how these rules work
Right.
that we forget that we're dealing with real people on the other end.
Right.
People who are influenced by emotions and biases
Yeah.
and all sorts of mental shortcuts.
It's like we've been focusing on the tools,
Mm-hmm.
but now it's time to think about the hands that are using those tools.
Exactly. And the thing is,
Yeah.
even a well-intentioned recommendation can have unintended consequences.
Right.
Let's take a seemingly harmless example.
Okay.
An online store using recommendation rules to suggest products based on your past purchases.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds helpful.
On the surface, it does. It's like the store is saying, hey, based on what you bought before, we think you might also like this.
Right. But imagine those recommendations lead to a sort of filter bubble.
Okay.
You're only exposed to products that fit your existing preferences.
Right.
And you miss out on discovering new things that you might enjoy even more
Oh.
if you just had a chance to see them.
It's like getting stuck in an echo chamber of your own tastes.
It's
You never venture outside your comfort zone.
You never venture outside your comfort zone. So.
Yeah, so how do we ensure these recommendation rules are used ethically and responsibly?
That's the question.
How do we make sure they're truly helping users without limiting their choices
Right.
or inadvertently shaping their preferences?
Those are some big questions.
Where do we even begin to address them?
Well, a good starting point is transparency.
Okay.
Users should be aware that recommendations are being made, and ideally have a basic understanding of how those suggestions are being generated.
So no sneaky manipulation going on behind the curtain.
Exactly. It's about empowering users to make informed decisions,
Okay.
not tricking them into buying things they don't really need or want,
Right.
just because an algorithm told them to.
Okay. Transparency makes sense.
Okay.
What else should we be thinking about?
Diversity of options is crucial.
Okay.
Even if your algorithm is incredibly good at predicting what a user might like, it's important to still present a variety of choices,
right.
including some that might fall outside their typical preferences.
They're encouraging them to explore a little,
Yeah,
break out of that echo chamber we talked about.
exactly. And that ties into another key principle: user control.
Okay.
People should be able to adjust their preferences easily, turn off recommendations completely,
Right.
or even provide feedback on the suggestions they're receiving.
It's all about putting the user in the driver's seat,
Yeah,
giving them the power to decide how much influence these rules have
exactly.
over their experience.
And finally, it's crucial to monitor the impact of these rules over time.
Okay.
Are they genuinely helping users find what they need?
Yeah. Are they creating any unintended biases?
Yeah. Are they leading to a more satisfying experience overall?
So it's an ongoing process of evaluation and improvement, not just a set it and forget it kind of deal.
Absolutely. Technology is always evolving.
Right.
And so is our understanding of human behavior. What works today might not work tomorrow, so we have to stay vigilant and adapt accordingly.
Wow, this has been eye-opening.
It has.
We've gone from the nitty-gritty technical details of how these rules work
Yeah.
to these much broader ethical and psychological considerations.
Yeah.
It's clear that recommendation rules are incredibly powerful tools.
They are.
But like any tool,
Yeah.
they can be used for good or for less than good purposes.
Well said. And ultimately, it's up to all of us, the designers, the developers, and yes, even the users of this technology,
Right.
to ensure that it's being used in a way that benefits individuals and society as a whole.
Well, that's a great point to end on. So as you navigate the digital world, keep an eye out for those subtle nudges, those recommendations whispering in your ear. Ask yourself, are they guiding you towards something genuinely valuable, or are they subtly steering you down a path someone else has chosen? The answer, as always, lies in staying informed, being aware, and most importantly, staying in control of your own choices. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into recommendation rules.